Hi, I'm David, one of the tutors here at the Chandler-Gilbert Community College Writing Center.
And I'm Veronica, another one of the tutors here at the Writing Center. Every day, students visit us for help with writing and proofreading their essays.
Learning to revise and proofread essays is one of the most frequent requests we get here at the Writing Center.
That's why we created this workshop. Revising and proofreading are important stages in the writing process, but many students lack good skills and strategies for improving their writing.
It can be so frustrating to work hard on an essay and still get points off for things like organization, clarity, sentence structure, grammar, and spelling.
The good news is that we're here to help. After watching this video, you will understand the difference between revising and proofreading, learn strategies to help you with both, know how to fix most common grammar errors, and have resources to help you with revising and proofreading your own work.
So let's get started. Did you notice that the topic of this workshop was revising and proofreading? That leads us to our first question. What's the difference?
Well, for one thing, revision deals with what we call high-order concerns. At this stage, writers are taking a close look at their thesis statement and development, paragraph structure, transitions between their ideas, and their introduction and conclusion.
So, when we revise our writing, we're making sure our paper works, just like you want someone to be sure that a bridge really works before you drive across it.
Proofreading, on the other hand, deals with low-order concerns. These include your spelling, sentence structure, grammar, and punctuation. Ultimately, proofreading is about readability. You don't want anything to distract your reader from your message.
Here are some general strategies to keep in mind while you're working on your writing projects.
Revision can happen before, during, and after the writing process. It is constant, so stay flexible while you're writing.
Keep in mind that because revision focuses on different priorities than proofreading, it's important to keep them separate. You can only think about one thing at a time, so don't try to scan for spelling errors while also evaluating the effectiveness of your thesis statement.
To make sure your ideas are as clear to others as they are to you, visit with a Writing Center tutor.
When it comes to proofreading, our best advice is to slow down. It's tempting to rush this stage of writing, but that's how errors get overlooked.
So start by taking a break after you finish writing. Then when you're ready, set aside time just for proofreading. To help yourself slow down, read your work out loud. Using a page to cover your text so that you're only reading one line at a time helps you find errors too. Finally, reading your essay from the bottom up is one of the best ways to catch spelling errors.
But even more important is to personalize your proofreading techniques to the types of errors you make. Nobody makes every mistake in the grammar book. We all have patterns of errors we tend to repeat again and again. It's best if you spend your time proofreading looking for those errors you know are an issue for you.
If you're not sure what your patterns of error are, your instructor or a Writing Center tutor can help you identify them.
Now let's get down to the nitty-gritty. Just what is involved with revising and proofreading your work?
In this section of the workshop, we'll walk you through a four-step process for evaluating and revising your work. In this stage, you are primarily concerned with how well you expressed and organized your ideas.
You'll start by focusing on your thesis statement. Find it and copy it onto a separate sheet of paper. Ask yourself if your thesis clearly states the topics covered in your paper. If this is an argument paper, did you clearly identify your position or stand? Finally, did you give your readers a clear heads up about what topics the paper will cover?
The next step is to make sure that each paragraph is truly building your thesis. To do that, look at each paragraph and list the central idea of that paragraph. Include 2 or 3 options if necessary.
Return to your paper where you wrote your thesis statement. List the paragraph ideas in order under your thesis statement.
Using your new list, decide if each paragraph clearly relates and develops your thesis statement. If not, you'll need to either rewrite your thesis statement to include the unrelated ideas or delete the unrelated paragraph. To help keep your paragraphs on track, try using the pie paragraph structure.
Start each paragraph with a clearly identified point. This is usually located in the first or second sentence. Think of this as a mini thesis statement for the paragraph.
Each paragraph should also include information and examples that clearly illustrate your point. You need to give your readers a reason to agree with you. This is where you use the facts, statistics, quotes, and examples you acquired in your research to support your points.
Finally, you need to explain how those illustrations support the main point of your paragraph, and therefore your thesis statement.
In the revision process, you'll also want to look at how well your ideas are flowing. Look at the transitional ideas between your paragraphs. Sometimes all you need is a word or phrase. Other times you may need more to connect one idea in one paragraph to another.
To revise for order and development, look for the repeated use of words or phrases like also, as well, or the next aspect is. These phrases indicate that you might be just listing ideas in your paper and not fully developing them. To fix this problem, look for places in between your paragraphs to expand ideas, add details, or make a point.
That covers the main idea of revising. Remember, to make your revising stage productive, you really need feedback from your readers. The challenge of writing is getting ideas out of our head and onto the page. Sometimes our thoughts aren't as clear to others as they are to us. Once you are pleased with the organization, clarity, and coherence of your ideas, it's time to work on the last stage, proofreading. Here are some of the common usage errors that students are most likely to find while proofreading. Spelling, using too many or too few commas, verb usage, misplaced or dangling modifiers. Definitely take advantage of technology. Use spell check to catch the most obvious errors. But don't stop there. Remember, spell check doesn't catch all mistakes, such as words that sound alike, like there, and there.
Anytime you are unsure of how to spell a word, use your dictionary. This is the best source of correct information. You also have the added benefit of learning new words and definitions as you look up words.
We all have words that we tend to misspell again and again. The best way to deal with this is to make a cheat sheet. Be sure to refer to it while proofreading. Before you know it, those words won't be a problem for you anymore.
There are certain words in the English language that seem to cause more problems than others. We suggest visiting the Writing Center to get a copy of the handout called Frequently Misspelled Words.
Ah yes, the dreaded comma. This might be the #1 problem students bring to the Writing Center.
There are many different rules to keep in mind when deciding whether or not to use a comma. Let's review a few.
Use the comma to signal a pause between the introductory element of a sentence and the main clause.
Here's an example sentence. Note that the comma separates the introductory word frankly from the main clause of the sentence.
Another situation that requires a comma is when you have two complete sentences linked by a conjunction. For, and, nor, but, or, yet, and so are all coordinating conjunctions. Here's an example of using a comma with a coordinating conjunction. Notice that if we change the sentence to read, Meredith wore jeans to the hotel and changed before the wedding, you would no longer need a comma. The moral of the story is, conjunction should be a tip-off that you might need a comma.
Another situation that requires a comma is when your sentence includes a non-restrictive element.
What the heck is a non-restrictive element?
I'm glad you asked. Non-restrictive elements could be called non-essential elements. They are words, phrases, or clauses that give a little extra information, but could be deleted without changing the meaning of the sentence. Placing the comma depends on where the element is in the sentence. If it is in the middle of the sentence, use commas before and after to set the element apart from the rest of the sentence. In this sentence, the information that Sarah was president of the club is extra information. It tells you a little more about Sarah, but it's really not essential for the sentence to make sense. Restrictive elements are words, phrases, or clauses that restrict the meaning of the sentence. Do not use a comma with restrictive elements because restrictive elements cannot be deleted without changing the meaning of the sentence.
Here's an example of a sentence with a restrictive element. The restrictive element is the phrase, "that I borrowed." If we eliminate the restrictive element, we lose important meaning in the sentence. Without the restrictive clause, the speaker could be returning the sweater to a store for a refund, or to a friend who loaned it to her, or maybe she even stole it. Without the restrictive element, we don't know what sweater she is talking about.
Another situation that requires commas is when you have a list in your sentence. Most people know to use commas to separate all the items in a series. Sometimes students are unsure if they need to use a comma before the word "and" in a list. The answer is yes. Actually, a comma splice occurs when two or more clauses that could each stand alone as a sentence are written with only a comma between them.
There are many different ways to fix a comma splice. The first way is to separate the clauses with a period or semicolon. You could also choose to connect the clauses using words like and, for, because, or although. Finally, you could just rewrite the comma splice into one sentence.
Here's an example of a comma splice. Notice how the clauses on both sides of the comma could stand alone as sentences.
Here are 3 different examples of how to fix the comma splice using the techniques we talked about. In the first example, the writer linked the independent clauses with a semicolon. In the second example, we used the coordinating conjunction "and" with a comma to fix the comma splice. In the final example, the writer just rewrote the sentence to eliminate the comma splice problem.
Sometimes students get marked off for the problem of fused sentences. Fused sentences happen when two or more independent clauses that could each be written as separate sentences are written without any punctuation between them.
There are a few ways you can fix a fused sentence. One is to divide the independent clauses into separate sentences. You could also find a way to join them in a way that shows their relationship. Let's look at some examples.
In this sentence, you can see how the writer has put two independent clauses together without any punctuation between them.
To fix the sentence, you could simply use a period to separate the sentences from each other. Or you could use a comma and a coordinating conjunction. You could also rewrite the sentence if you like.
Sentence fragments occur when a student writes an incomplete sentence and punctuates it as if it were a complete independent sentence. Fragments are easy to fix. Sometimes you can link the incomplete sentence to the previous or next sentence, or rewrite it as a complete sentence.
The clause, "a person whom I trust and admire," is a fragment. It can't stand alone as a sentence. To repair the sentence, we link the fragment to the preceding clause with a comma. Now it's a complete sentence.
The best way to recognize a fused sentence is to read your paper aloud. Better yet, have someone read it aloud to you. He may have trouble reading fused sentences because no punctuation will tell the reader where to pause.
Has your teacher ever told you to be sure to write an active voice? Just what does that mean anyway?
Well, it has to do with who is performing the action in the sentence. If the subject of the sentence is performing the action, the verb is an active voice. If the subject of the sentence is receiving the action, then the verb is passive.
Here's an example sentence written in both passive and active voice. In the passive sentence, the subject is the ball, but the ball isn't performing any action. Instead, it's being acted upon. To fix a passive sentence, just make sure that the subject of the sentence is performing, not receiving, the action.
Take note that sometimes it's appropriate to use the passive voice verb. You might choose the passive if you want to emphasize the receiver of the action or minimize the importance of the actor. Passive voice is often used in scientific and technical writing, where the emphasis is on the subject being discussed or studied, not the researcher.
Here are two examples of sentences appropriately written in passive voice.
In the first sentence, the writer could have said, "The fire destroyed the medical records." But since there was important information lost, the writer used passive voice to emphasize the records rather than the fire. In the second example, the writer could have said, "I performed the experiment successfully," but that would have made the speaker the most important element of the sentence. To keep the emphasis on the experiment, the writer used passive voice.
Sometimes in the course of drafting an essay, writers accidentally shift from one tense to another without good reason. This can confuse readers. In this first sentence, the reader initially used past tense, but then switched to present. It's very easy to fix. As you can see, we just changed all the verbs to past tense.
A similar verb problem occurs with subject-verb agreement. You need to make sure that the subject and the verb of each sentence agree.
Sometimes when other words appear between the subject and the verb, you may mistake the noun closest to the verb for the verb's real subject.
You can see in the first example that the writer chose a verb to agree with goals, but the actual subject of that sentence is part, not goals. We fix the sentence by changing the verb to its singular form so it agrees with the subject.
The last grammar problem we'll cover is misplaced or dangling modifiers. This problem occurs when words, clauses, and phrases are not clearly connected to the word they are supposed to modify. As you can see, misplaced modifiers can create a completely different meaning than what you intended.
To find this problem, circle all the modifiers in your sentence and draw a line to the words they describe. Be sure they can't mistakenly modify some other word.
If in doubt, read your sentence to someone else and make sure he or she understands the sentence the way you intended.
That concludes our video workshop on how to revise and proofread your writing.
Hopefully you learned some new tricks and strategies to improve your proofreading and revising skills. The tutors at the Writing Center can also help. While we can't edit or proofread your paper for you, we'd be happy to work with you to make your writing better.
Thanks for your time and attention today. We look forward to seeing you in the Writing Center soon.